You've got anime games, you've got anime gacha games, you've got anime based on anime based gacha games. What's next? An anime based on an anime gacha game based on an anime? Wait, that's just Super Dragon Ball Heroes. Okay, so I'm a gacha game enjoyer. I frequently dip my hand into whatever new shiny gacha game gets announced. I used to play Genshin, but the grind got to me and I quit. I've since then moved over to Honkai Star Rail and have been playing it since launch. And let me just make some things clear. Yes, I go outside to touch grass. Yes, I take showers. Yes, I have a healthy relationship with my parents. And yes, I have a mild gambling addiction, which is exactly why I play gacha games. So, the Genshin Impact anime was announced a year ago and it's still in the works, being done by Ufotable of all people. It's safe to say that this might end up being the most expensive gacha game ad ever, and will most likely drive up Hoyoverse stocks. This gave me the bright idea to take a look at a few anime adaptations of gacha games to see how they do things. It's already hard enough making an anime adaptation of an existing video game. There are often two routes to this. The first is just to adapt the main story, focusing on all the key moments and cutting out all of the extra smaller story bits to fit into the runtime, which oftentimes ends up being a lackluster experience. And the second being to create an anime original story that puts the characters in a scenario far removed from the story. In a nutshell, create filler. These adaptations often fall flat, which doesn't do the source material justice. Looking at you, Persona 5 the animation. But the case is ever so slightly different for gacha game adaptations. That difference being, well, most of them kind of suck. Their main goal is advertising a product to you, that product being the many waifu JPEGs you can stand a chance to get your hands on. So the main goal of most of them is putting the waifus front and center first before presenting a decent story to you. For this video, I'll be talking about 4 different adaptations and we'll be judging them on several criteria. First, the story. How well they present their plots, progression and development, as well as how engaging their stories were. Next is the characters. How well the anime puts its waifus on display and if they do a good job making you want to pull for said characters in-game. After that is the presentation. This is stuff like art, animation and music and how well it's all executed. And last of all, the overall enjoyment. So with further ado, kicking things off with the first adaptation on this list. Takt Op Destiny. Coming out in October of 2021, Takt Op Destiny was a very interesting case because there was a pretty decent amount of hype surrounding it. That was because the studio, or rather the studios behind the animation, MAPPA and Madhouse, were joining hands to animate it. It was unheard of, 2 of the most popular studios coming together to make a high quality anime original for an IP that nobody had heard of was crazy. So a lot of people had their eyes on it, not even knowing it was based on a soon to be released gacha game, making it one of the most high quality ads out there. So what's the premise / gimmick behind Takt Op Destiny? Well, it's turning classical music into badass fighting waifus. Let me explain. So this world is plagued by monsters that came from a meteor that crashed into Earth. They're called D2, and they don't like sound, more specifically, complex sound that comes in rhythms, aka music. So in order to protect humanity, music has been pretty much banned with a whole generation growing up never even knowing what music is. As you can expect, normal human weapons don't do anything against them. The only way to actually fight them is with the power of anime waifus who are personifications of classical music. They are called music arts. It's as silly and absurd as it sounds, but it just works because anime. I'm no classical music guy. The closest I get to classical music is One Winged Angel, so I wasn't exactly sold on the concept. I mean, you'd have to fit a very specific niche. That means you have to be an anime fan, a gacha game fan, and a classical music fan, which I fear severely narrows the target audience. Speaking of audience, during the anime's run, I heard a lot of people compare it to Fate because of the somewhat similar concepts and execution. Hell, even the main girl, Destiny, bears a striking resemblance to Saber. No, not that one. That one. But I honestly don't see it. The only thing they really have in common is summoning waifus based on real world things to do battle for them. If that's the case, Fate is just Pokemon waifu version. Takt Op Destiny follows the journey of our main character, Takt, his music art, Destiny, and Anna, friend to Takt and older sister to Destiny. I'll explain that in a bit. The trio are on a journey to a facility called the Symphonica, all the way in New York. They're heading there because of the unique condition Takt and Destiny are in. You see, Destiny wasn't always Destiny but actually a girl called Cosette, who was Anna's little sister and Takt's close friend, who she had a crush on. However, their peaceful times were short-lived. During a D2 attack, Cosette was unfortunately killed, but in her final moments, thanks to her coincidentally having one of the magic crystals that creates music cards, she is reborn as Destiny, an entirely different person, binding her and Takt as conductor and music art. This mode of music art awakening is one that's never been done before. Making it even more grim is the fact that anytime Destiny transforms, Takt loses an arm. And the longer she's in that form, the more life force she drains from Takt. So they are all heading to New York to get them checked and hopefully bring Cosette back. The story of Takt Op Destiny is one of the weaker aspects of the anime. It's fairly episodic and slow paced, the crew moving from one American state to another, encountering self-contained stories. They reach a new place, deal with some kind of music related problem, fight a D2 and move on to the next state. There really isn't a lot to be had for an overarching narrative, which ends up making the story feel kind of directionless. Like at some point, they stopped to bring down a gambling ring that was doing shady business, ironic considering this is a gacha game. It's until the last few episodes where the pacing and stakes pick up, and now seemingly the whole world is in danger, with Takt and Destiny being the only ones who can stop it. Yeah, it leaves a lot to be desired. Like the antagonist of the story is one of those losers that think that the only way to save the world is by destroying it, blah blah blah. And they also do that thing where they reveal that the good things they use to fight the bad things are actually the same things. I can't exactly say that the story was all that fun. It was one of those cases where the series was carried by its animation. Insert Demon Slayer joke here. But hey, at least the story is actually a prequel, so that means you won't have to play through the mobile game itself. The mobile game I couldn't play because it wasn't available in my country. For something meant to promote a game all about collecting JPEGs of classical music turned anime girls, it doesn't really do a good job showing off the product all that well. Throughout the 12 episode run, only like 5 are recurring. That's Destiny and 4 other music cards. The anime only waits till like the last 2 episodes to show off other music cards for like a second or two. And it's a shame that's the case because these character designs are really top notch and glamorous. But at the same time, I can understand the direction it was going because it didn't want to just overwhelm the viewers with so many different music cards, instead to have you look forward to them in the mobile game. Keeping a small size of recurring music cards helped the anime focus on the story and characters. Sure, they aren't all that great, but I gotta give credit for the anime for trying. The music cards don't get enough screen time as it is, so when they do, they have to bedazzle you into wanting to pull for them the moment their banner drops. Heck, there is literally one of them that doesn't have a conductor, essentially just waving her around and saying, hey, you can pull her in the game. But seeing as this is a prequel, I guess it makes sense for them not to be all on display. Despite the flaws the anime had, if it's one aspect it absolutely delivers in, is in its presentation, the most standout being the animation. Mappa and Madhouse really went all in for the episodes they put out, taking turns animating each episode. Almost every episode had an action sequence, something I wasn't expecting from this ad. It tried really well not just to be an ad, but an anime original. Some episodes had action that was really fluid with a ton of special effects and sakuga, while others just felt clunky and didn't have that much impact as they intended. But regardless, they were still entertaining enough, not just on an orgasmic level. To make things even better was the music. It was pretty cool having high octane scenes accompanied with strong classical music, making them feel a lot more epic. Though sometimes the anime couldn't decide if it wanted to stick to classical music and would switch it up with some hard rock to fuel the hype of the scene, only to switch it back to classical music, which ended up being jarring. This is one high quality adaptation and I can see this being a favorite for a lot of people, gacha aside, so presentation wise I can't really find a fault in it. Takt Op Destiny was a pretty okay watch. It had its moments of being fun, but towards the end it just ended up being really predictable. It also doesn't help that the show's pacing in the middle might have put a few people off of it. It comes off as being mostly style and very little substance, because there's only so much flashy fight scenes you can do before putting you off and losing interest in the story, and even worse for the IP holders, driving you away from their mobile game. All in all, if I was to give this a rating out of 10, I'd give it a 6. While Takt Op Destiny was an adaptation from a brand new IP, what happens when you get an adaptation of a gacha game which in itself is a spin-off of a popular IP? Well, you get Magia Record Madoka Magica Side Story. For many, this is probably your first time hearing about it, and I wouldn't blame you. Madoka Magica was one of the most genre-redefining series to come out in the last 2 decades. It was such a captivating and terrifying story that hooked anyone that watched it. It broke through the anime original curse and delivered an amazing story from start to finish, and even with its amazing success, it was a series that wasn't really milked for all it was worth. So imagine my surprise when finding out that Magia Record was something that existed. At first I was curious because, well, more Madoka, but then I found out it was actually based on a mobile game, and then my mood soured. My headcanon is that someone saw that last scene in the original anime where Madoka saved magical girls from around the world and thought, hey, we could do something with this. And so Magia Record was born. Magia Record is set in an alternate universe that still follows a lot of the basic principles of Madoka Magica, but with more magical girls. The story centers around this magical girl, Iroha, who's in a strange predicament. For some reason, she can't remember the wish she made. Even stranger, Kyubey, the one who granted the wish, can't remember it too. She can't help but feel like she's forgetting something important, but can't remember what that is, until she hears a rumor about a particular city, Kamihama City, where magical girls can go to be saved. She winds up there, and thanks to mishaps, she's able to remember of bits of what she's forgotten, as well as her wish. Turns out what she forgot was her sister, who's been kind of erased out of existence. Her wish prior to that being to cure whatever disease her sister had. It's unclear if her wish caused her sister's erasure or if other factors are at play here, but Iroha is determined to solve the mystery and find her sister. So she investigates the city looking for clues, all the while running into other magical girls with their own personal struggles and fighting witches who apparently get stronger in Kamihama City. There's a lot of mystery laid down in Magia Record. From Iroha's wish and her sister, to the rumors surrounding Kamihama City and why witches get stronger there, to the magical girl cult that seems to want to bring salvation to all the magical girls. Everything seemingly connected in one way or the other. Too bad the story doesn't really do anything with all the plot threads. I found the anime to be incredibly boring. Episode after episode would pass by without the plot ever making any kind of substantial progress. It acts like it wants to do something with the plot, but ends up focusing on something entirely different that feels like side stories. It brings the pacing to a screeching halt and makes for an uninteresting watch through, as it doesn't feel like there's really any direction the anime is going. Until the end, when the pacing picks up yet again, but this time ends on a cliffhanger, having all your unanswered questions be left for the next season. That's right, it got 2 seasons. They really had a lot of faith in the anime. It's a shame the mobile game it was based off on was cancelled due to low sales. If you're a fan of Madoka Magica, I can't really recommend this for the story. There are a bunch of magical girls that show up during the run of the 13 episode anime. It makes sense considering you want them to be on display as much as possible. However, because of this, the story suffers greatly. It's kind of the same problem Takt Op Destiny had, except it didn't have its JPEGs on display. Magia Record tries to make you care about the magical girls they show you by having stories centered around them, but like I said earlier, they are just way too boring to be invested in. Sure, it was nice seeing the many magical girls that showed up, their weapons and their skills, but it's hard to actually care about them when they just come off as one note and hollow. It tries to get you to see all these magical girls, but at the same time makes them kind of unlikable since they detract from the main story, bringing the story to a stop to focus on them. It became jarring, and by the 5th episode you could see the pattern clear as day, which just made watching it even worse. So the anime ends up not really making me all that interested in them at all. Also, on a side note, some of the girls from the OG Madoka Magica show up, but their presence feels really out of place and awkward. My guess is that this is just fan service. Right from the first episode, Magia Record does a lot to establish itself from the OG. It doesn't try to replicate what Madoka Magica tried to do, instead it tries to do its own thing, which I have respect for. It creates an entirely different atmosphere, all the while still feeling familiar. From the weird settings that feel like liminal spaces that drive the feeling that the struggles the magical girls go through are some of the loneliest, to the powerful framing that really lets you soak up the environment, all the while giving a sense of unease. There is just an uncomfortable undertone to it, and it's made better with the art and animation. I'm glad they carried over the style which is had from Madoka Magica and made them feel otherworldly with their trippy labyrinths and airy music. There was never really a shoddy moment in my time of watching the anime, save for some few CGI. However, while the presentation is great, it is yet again bogged down by the overall story that really doesn't give you any incentive to keep watching, which ends up feeling like a waste for such a good presentation. Magia Record wasn't all that fun for me. It was such a slog going from episode to episode that I just had to stop, skip the final two to see how it ended, and still felt like I hadn't really missed much in terms of story. And even after that ending, it still felt like nothing was answered throughout the season, aside from the true nature of witches, which was already revealed to us in Madoka Magica. I can't really recommend this to fans of the series simply because it only just leaves you wanting to watch Madoka Magica again, which you pretty much should. I don't know, I think this is for like the die-hard Madoka fans, so I'm leaving Magia Record with a rating of 4. So that's 2 gacha adaptations that have been pretty iffy so far, but worry not, as the next anime is one that is surprisingly really fun to watch, somehow able to perfectly blend everything together to make for a great watch even as a standalone series with some great production value behind it. I bring you Princess Connect Redive, as the fans call it, Precon. It was a series I went into expecting it to suck, and also the only one I tried to play when it first released because of how heavily Crunchyroll and the Hololive EN girls were pushing it, but once I got a taste of the gameplay, I was immediately put off from it and never tried it again. The anime adaptation on the other hand was something entirely different. The best way to describe this anime would be Konosuba but wholesome, which is funny because they share the same producer. It doesn't take itself too seriously and aims to deliver a good time, and honestly for me, it was a welcome change of pace from all the other lackluster gacha adaptations I had seen prior. Sure, it has its typical comedy anime tropes of overreaction, yelling and zany antics, but it never feels repetitive, with some of the jokes actually being funny. It ended up being the comfort show I would watch between watching some of the other gacha anime to serve as a palate cleanser. Princess Connect takes a slice of life approach and it isn't heavy on story. Yes, there is an actual story, but it's drip fed to you in tidbits per episode. This isn't a problem because the slice of life aspects are entertaining enough to make up for the light story. The story being about a group of people, one of whom is a stand-in for the player character, as they spend their days getting into all sorts of wacky scenarios and silly antics. They're all a bunch of misfits who come together to form a guild called Gourmet Guild, with the main goal to cook and try out all sorts of meals their world has to offer. There's a heavy emphasis on food, which is driven by the poster girl of the series, Pecorine, and her seemingly bottomless stomach. The food, might I add, looks really good. There is a narrative to be followed and the anime does a good job presenting it to you, but it never really feels like the main focus. There is an antagonist with plans that we are unsure of, but it acts like a sort of B-plot and is only ever really built upon every 2 episodes or so. It almost feels like the anime is telling us that if you want the full story, you'll have to play the game where all the serious stuff are in. Cause for now, the anime is mostly just good, wholesome vibes. And I totally fuck with that. The characters of Princess Connect and the way they show up in the anime are pretty interesting. Since the series is a slice of life, it makes it easy for all the various summonable waifus to show up and just be there for what the plot of that episode needs them to be. They never feel forced on the story and they don't stay longer than they need to. I really liked this approach because it gave you a taste of who they were without ever really making them seem like the main focus of the episode, and it really helped this fantasy world feel more alive and lived in, because every waifu that showed up felt like they had their own stories going on while the main characters were doing their own things. Stories I have a feeling would have been expanded on in the mobile game. If I was to give one gripe with the characters though, it would be their designs. They all feel pretty generic. I feel like I've seen this kind of character 1,000 times over, and with the limited time they get on screen, it only makes them a tad bit forgettable. Not this Llama Girl though. In my opinion, she's like the most uniquely designed character in the entire anime. I swear to God I'm not a furry. Damn, Princess Connect is the best looking series on the list. You can tell the production team behind the series set out to deliver a high quality anime, and they cooked. The art and animation look really clean. I didn't expect such high fidelity from an anime that was mostly slice of life, but it completely shattered my expectations. And for a slice of life anime, there was a surprising amount of action in it. And when the action kicks in, it goes in hard with some great animation to accompany it. It really tries to play to both sides of the slice of life enjoyers and the action enjoyers. It really knows its target audience. But the wholesome slice of life moments are the strongest parts of the series. My favorite scene would have to be when the crew sets out on their first adventure. We just get a sequence of beautiful moments, all of them just having fun. There are no words, just characters, the open sky, and the joy they emanate. And it's made even better thanks to the music and sound design. The music really helps to drive that homey feeling and sense of adventure, leaving quite the impression on you and leaves you wanting to head out on an adventure too. And the sound design is low-key some of the best around. When the action kicks in, the sound really helps to make the impact of hits feel, well, impactful. It's amazing they were able to put out 2 seasons of this, and frankly, I'll definitely be checking out the second season. Though it's a shame the game was shut down earlier this year. Princess Connect was a really fun watch, filling the Konosuba-sized hole in my chest while giving me extra to be invested in. There was never a dull moment during my watch through, and it actually had me looking forward to the next episode. Though it did come off as repetitive sometimes, mostly with some of the character interactions. They were easy to overlook though with the frequent formula shakeup. I'm glad the series didn't take itself too seriously and just wanted to show you a good time, but it's not exactly for everyone, and I don't think it's something that one should binge. But despite everything, Princess Connect gets an 8 from me. Okay, before I move on to the final adaptation of the day, if you've been enjoying the video so far, why not drop a like, and if you really like the content I put out, consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content. Also, let me know what your experience with gacha games are, and like if you do play them, what your favorites are in the comments. As for me, mine is Honka Star Rail simply because I don't need to spend so much time grinding. Alright, back to the video. So we've seen adaptations deliver on great action. We've seen them deliver on great atmosphere, and we've seen them deliver on good vibes, all the while putting their waifus on good display. Now get ready for the gacha adaptation that does all of this, but worse. I bring you Dolls Frontline, or as some people know it, Girls Frontline, was a series whose gacha game I was pretty aware of, mostly because it was one you'd see popped up a lot when looking into the genre. I heard nothing but high praise about the franchise that spans across all sorts of different mediums, its mobile game being front and center, getting the most praise for its story, so it gave me the impression that maybe the anime would deliver in the story aspects. It didn't, and I could barely get past episode 5. The world of Dolls Frontline is one that's ravaged by war. World War III had just happened with the use of AI robots called tactical dolls, T-dolls for short. These are robots that are used and are modeled after specific real-world guns. Yeah, they turned guns into rifles to wage their wars. However, after the end of the war, one of the doll manufacturers, the Sang-V, which I guess was being controlled by an AI, saw humanity and realized that, yeah, humans are shit, and it rebelled, creating T-dolls with the goals of wiping out humanity. Yup, we have Terminator Waifu Edition. The story, however, focuses on a specific group of T-dolls called the AR team, as they are on a mission to retrieve and deliver some very classified information. It's a fight for survival as they try to return to base, doing combat with the ever-evolving Sang-V doll and their advanced weaponry. On paper, that sounds like a great concept that would make for some intense plots, but the execution is so underwhelming. From the start, it feels like we've been dropped right in the middle of a story that moves at such a boring pace. You get the sense that there's supposed to be tension for our main characters, but it doesn't feel like there is because of how static and repetitive everything feels. I honestly can't say much for the plot because there really isn't anything to say about it, hence why I couldn't get past episode 5. The characters of Dolls Frontline don't feel like characters. They say words, they do things, but they don't really feel like characters to invest time and energy into. They all feel very one-dimensional. And I'm not talking about the random side characters. No, I'm talking about the main characters. I forget they exist until they show up on screen. It also doesn't help that the character designs didn't translate well into the anime, making them feel even more generic. I understand you can't fit all that character design detail from the game into animation, but they really come off as bland and unimpressive. Maybe because they were AI robots, but they really just come off as lifeless NPCs that only get a few lines of dialogue, and they showed a lot of the Gun Girls throughout my time watching. So I left the anime with no desire to want to collect these robot waifus. This anime had some of the worst presentation I had seen so far. Everything about it just felt dull to experience. It felt like the studio behind it were doing the bare minimum enough to get a passing grade for what makes an animation an animation. There are just a lot of bland and static scenes that don't engage you in any way. I had half the mind to slap on some Subway Surfers gameplay just to make watching it slightly better. It also fails to deliver in any kind of good action. Since gunplay is its main focus, you'd expect at least some kind of spectacle, right? Wrong. Most of it just has the characters point their guns, stand still and shoot. Maybe this is supposed to reflect the gameplay, but there is no form of enjoyment to be had. All the fights are just white streaks darting across the scene while the characters just stand there. And even when it tries to have more intense one-on-one fights, it just looks choppy and unfinished. Like, just look at this. And this is made even worse with the music. Wait, hold on. Did the anime even have any kind of background music? Give me a sec.
A few moments later.
Huh. It did. Could have sworn the whole anime was silent save for the OP. Speaking of the OP, this is the best part of the whole anime. It looks great, it sounds great, it's a shame the actual show itself is the exact opposite. I did not enjoy Doll's Frontline, like, at all. That's it. I don't have any long sentences for it. It was just bad and it felt like I wasted my time. Overall score, I'd give it a 2. When it all comes down to it, gacha game adaptations are just ads to get you to spend more on anime JPEG gambling simulators. So I guess it's on me for wanting more quality across the board. It's clear that not all gacha game adaptations are made equal. I'm sure there are a bunch out there that actually have some heart put into them, but those are diamonds in the rough. Or I guess I should say those are gems in the rough. But I don't think people should try to seek them out because they aren't exactly for everyone, so many might not enjoy them. But Princess Connect is pretty tight though, and I strongly recommend. As always, this has been your very favorite slice of bread. Stay toasty.